Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So the other day I put out a video talking about a Ben Bernanke speech that came out in 2002. And in this speech, Ben Bernanke pretty much outlined all the footsteps that it would take to go into a quantitative easing program, and then how you were going to deal with the economy after the quantitative easing program, because he knew that the interest rates were going to be very low by that point, and they would run into the lower bound, or they were bound by zero, which is zero interest rates. And so I did a little breakdown of this video, and there was a section in there that people kept asking me about, and they wanted to know what that meant when they was talking about the corporate tax cuts and paid for with the deficit spending. And so I thought I would kind of break that little section down of the speech for you, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit. So anyway, here's the section of the speech. It goes like this. Each of the policy operations I have discussed so far involves the Fed acting on its own. In practice, the effectiveness of an anti-deflationary policy could be significantly enhanced by the cooperation between the monetary and fiscal authorities. A broad-based tax cut, for example, accommodated by a program of open market purchases to alleviate any tendency for interest rates to increase, would almost certainly be an effective stimulant tool to consumption and hence to prices. Even if households decided not to increase consumption but instead rebalance their portfolio by using their extra cash to acquire real and financial assets, the resulting increase in asset values would lower the cost of capital and improve the balance sheet's position of potential borrowers. A money finance tax cut is essentially equivalent to Milton Friedman's famous helicopter drop of money. Of course, in lieu of tax cuts or increase in transfer to the government could increase the spending on current goods and services or even acquire existing real or financial assets. If the Treasury issued debt to purchase private assets and the Fed then purchased an equal amount of Treasury debt with newly created money, the whole operation would be an economic equivalent of direct open market operations in private assets. Okay, there is a lot said inside of those two paragraphs, but the very first part of it, where he says here that a money finance tax cut is essentially equivalent to Milton Friedman's famous helicopter drop of money. So if you think back during the tax cuts, the corporate tax cuts, right? These corporations all of a sudden were flush with money. And what did they do with that money? They took that, because they didn't have to pay taxes with it, they took that money and they sent it over and bought their stocks back with it. And what happened when they bought their stocks back with it? Everybody's portfolio started to swell, right? Everybody started looking at their portfolios. They're like, oh my gosh, I got all this money in there. And what happens if you feel flush with money? You go off and you spend it, right? So that's essentially what had happened. Corporations got a tax cut. Now they had money in their hand. They took that money and they went and bought their own stocks back with it. When they did that, the prices of stocks went up. Everybody looked at their portfolio, went, holy moly, look at all the money I have. And they went off and started, spending it in the economy because they felt a lot more confident about how much money they had. Okay? The only problem is that when you cut taxes over here, you have to take away government, or you'll go down in financial in deficit spendings, right? Not down, you'll actually go up in deficit spendings, but you'll go deeper into debt or deeper into deficit spending if you don't find a place to cut taxes from government, or cut the government from the taxes that you're no longer taking from the corporations. But that didn't happen. What ended up happening is taxes got cut, and then government went deeper into debt. They went into more stimulant spending and stuff. Okay, so they went deeper into debt. These guys got their taxes cut. They took that money that they got overbought stocks with it, which made your portfolio or people's portfolio look a lot better, and they went off and spent that into the economy. That was essentially the helicopter drop of money, right? It was by giving those corporations the tax cut, making them flush with money again. The second part of that, where he says, of course, in lieu of tax cuts or increases in transfers, the government could increase spending on current goods and services or even acquire existing real or financial assets. If the Treasury issued debt to purchase private assets and the Fed then purchased an equal amount of Treasury debt with newly created money, the whole operation would be the economic equivalent of a direct open market operations in private assets. So think about that for just a second. Right after the financial crisis, right, there was this big movement of, hey, go back to school, go get your college education. In fact, all kids, all high school graduates should go off and get a college education. They should go and get a student loan. So that was the asset that the federal government, like the government itself, was looking to sell, right? So now they can go and issue treasuries, get the money, you know, the Federal Reserve is going to buy those treasuries, and now what is the government going to do with it? They're going to loan it to them kids, right? Who's going to use it to go and pay for schooling and stuff like that. So that's where the financial asset came from that they needed to be able to produce, or at least purchase, so that the Federal Reserve could then buy the treasury notes from the government. So if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, right, or not the Fed's, but the federal government's balance sheet, their financial asset portion of their balance sheet is like 50% student loans. So this whole time they've been guaranteeing or pushing out these student loans is so they can build these dang student loan asset-backed securities so that they have something for the Federal Reserve to loan them money for, or give them buy treasuries for. So you guys understand that? U.S. Treasury issued treasury bonds, right? The Federal Reserve then bought those treasury bonds. The government took the money that the Federal Reserve had produced and they used that to loan out to the students for student loan asset-backed securities. That was the assets that they needed. All right. I hope that kind of explains a little bit of it. There's a lot more to it than that. That is just a very small portion of what's going on inside of that. But a lot of people ask me how those corporate taxes apply to this helicopter, Milton Friedman's helicopter drop of money, and then a lot of people also ask me about, you know, what that meant by the government being able to either sell an asset or buy an asset or whatever in that student loan aspect of it. That was what I see, you know, happened, is that the federal government needed a place to send money to, or they needed an asset to purchase, you know, and those student loans was like perfect. You know, it was a whole prime group of people that didn't have any of these things yet, or didn't have a significant amount of them yet. And so, yeah, the government pushed those out there, so, you know, more stimulant to the economy, right? More paper out there, more loans, more loans. All right. Uneducated Economist, thank you very much. I hope that helped. Here, let me show you down the river here. Gosh, this place is just so rad this year. I have never seen Astoria as beautiful winter as we've had this year. Unbelievable. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.